Hey, I'm Handy with Shovels on Instagram, and my friends at the Curb Files asked that I do a trick tip video. So today I'm going to show you how to do the good old-fashioned rock and roll slide on a good red curb. Something like that. Okay, when you go to learn your rock and roll slide, you want to find yourself a curb to when your board is in the sliding position. On both sides, you have clearance, so your wheels aren't digging in and scrubbing out and causing you to stick and fall. And your foot positioning for the rock and roll slide is nothing special. It's just your common standard riding stance, whatever's most comfortable for you. So wherever it is, you just put your feet when you're just cruising, you're good to go. And sometimes people think it's a good way to ollie into a board slide on a curb, and I'm going to suggest for what we're talking about here, we're not going to do that, because when you ollie, you have a tendency to land and shoot the board out in front of you, and it gets away. So what we're going to do is talk about just wrapping the board over and getting into the slide going that way. So when you go to do that, you want to come parallel to this thing, or real close to parallel, and you want to have moderate speed, so when the board wraps into the slide, it has momentum to carry you. And what you got to be aware of is you want to lift your front wheels up and then turn your board into the curb. And what's going to take a little bit of experimenting is how far away from the curb you want to be to get your board to wrap over into the desired position. And what you don't want to have happen is your back wheels to scrub out, because obviously that's going to make the board stop and stick. And ideally, when you get the board wrapped, you're wrapped in the center, or even better, a little bit towards the back truck. And when you wrap the board over, you get your shoulders square with the board, in line with the board, knees slightly bent, and if anything, I like to sit back just a tiny bit, so that way the board has a little bit easier time moving forward. And what I'm looking at the whole time, from when I wrap the board over all the way until I turn out, is I'm looking here at my back truck bolts, so I can see what the truck is doing in relation to the curb and the wheels. I can see everything that's going on. And when it's time to turn out, basically, you just take your trailing shoulder and kind of throw it behind you, and that initiates a kick turn, and the board will just turn right out, and you set the front wheels down. It really is that simple. The mechanics would be the same if you have a curb where you have to turn out, or if you have a curb that has an end where you could slide off of the end. You would do the same thing. You would just throw your trailing shoulder behind you. So it's really not that hard. The hardest part getting used to is letting the board wrap and getting your approach fine-tuned to where when you let the board wrap, it doesn't just immediately dig into the wheels. So you got to figure out where you need to let the board wrap over, and that largely depends on how fast you're going and how far you want to try to slide. So you may shoot the board out a few times, but if you can get used to wrapping the board smoothly and swiftly, and as soon as you wrap standing square on it, that'll keep the board like this, and you won't be doing this, or worse yet, this. So it's not that hard. If you don't make it at first, keep trying. And worst case scenario, you can learn the rock and roll slide, come to a complete stop, and then turn out. And if you can do it that way, and get used to it that way, then doing it all in one moving motion, it's the same thing. It's just getting over that initial fear. So lastly, do rails help? I think they do, but they're not necessary. Some people don't like them. I like them because when the board wraps over, it's real stable. If you don't have rails, because of the concave of the board, it'll kind of rock a little bit, but that's just a matter of getting used to. So if you don't have rails, or you don't like rails, you don't need rails, unless you want to try them. So anyways, it's not that hard. Go get it. It's a super fun trick, and if you can learn on a curb, if you feel up to it, you can take it to a ramp or a bowl, and the mechanics work the same way. All right, go have some fun.